Hi, I'm Sarah Meeks, and I am studying investigative journalism this year. So I'm going to start off just talking a little bit about myself. Some things that, just like some character traits, I'm adventurous, motivated, smart, and protecting. I put protecting because it's kind of driven this whole desire for investigative journalism, and before that, criminal justice, which is what I studied last year, with my siblings. My siblings are some of my best friends. I'm always on the lookout. My brother, he'll come to church with me every now and then. I'm always making sure he has friends with him by his side, or I'm protective of my mom, things like that. That's just something that I think God blessed me with, that gift of wanting to protect others. And like I said, I'm a follower of Christ, and something that's very important to my life is mission trips, which I've been on several mission trips to Guatemala and Honduras, and I'm going again this summer to Honduras as a student leader, and I'm so excited. And that's just become a huge passion, and something that means so much to me in my life is the desire to protect those people that I've seen, because I feel like I've had the unique experience to see what it's like in other countries and how awful some of the conditions are there. And like this boy in particular in that picture, he had just been adopted after years and years of, like, his whole life he had been abused and thrown out onto the streets, and he was finally adopted that exact day into this orphanage that I was helping out at, and it was amazing to see the joy on his face at knowing that he was finally going to be accepted. And so that's just something that just means the world to me, is being able to change corruption. So I studied criminal justice last year, and that was also driven by that desire to find a way to make a difference in the world by protecting others. And my mentor was the supervisory special agent in charge of the Southwest Border Squad in the FBI. His name was Reiner Drolshagen, and he is now stationed, he's a special agent in charge of the field office in Charlotte, North Carolina now. But last year we worked together, and I got to see so much more about like how the nation protects itself and protects other countries through that time, and it was awesome. So that kind of led me to what I'm interested in studying next year, which I wasn't sure. At first last year I was thinking criminal justice, like I just wanted to study that and then go into FBI or CIA or something. And then this year I was like, actually last year I learned that studying criminal justice is not the best way to go if you're interested in that, because people in the FBI or CIA or whatever want you to have more of a diverse field, that you're more, I guess, that you know what you're doing in. So I was like, okay, I won't do criminal justice. What else do I love? And so I decided it's really just my passion for overseas, like my passion for making a difference. So I'm planning on majoring in international affairs and possibly minoring in journalism. I'm still trying to figure that out. But I haven't decided where I'm going yet, but I'm looking at UT, University of Southern California, New York University, George Washington, and the United States Air Force Academy, and Stanford. So I'll let you guys know as soon as I've made a decision. Okay, so why investigative journalism? It's pretty different than criminal justice, but it all came down to it boiled down to the point of wanting to fight corruption. And kind of my life verse, it's not my quote for the year, but it's just what I want to live by, is John 15:13, which is, "Greater love has none than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." And I want to live my life in a way that lives that verse out, able to just pour myself into others and change lives by just making myself available to Christ. So yeah, so I grew this desire for making a change in the world through my mission trips, and also I love writing. So throughout the years, I've always loved writing stories or papers, whatever. English has always been my favorite subject, even though a lot of people hate it. But yeah, I kind of put those together. I was thinking, I love the world and I want to make a difference in the world, and I love writing. And then I was like, why don't I look into investigative journalism? So that's kind of what brought me to my topic this year. So my quote for the year is, "Never be afraid to raise your voice for honesty and truth and compassion against injustice and lying and greed. If people all over the world would do this, it would change the earth." And I just love that, because that's exactly what I'm hoping to do. I've always been sort of I'm introverted, and I've been a quiet person, but if I see something going on that I don't agree with, I raise my voice about it, and I'm not going to stand by and let it happen. So that's what I want to do with the rest of my life, and that's why I put it for this year with investigative journalism, fighting to uncover corruption. So moving into research for the year, I started off with what is investigative journalism? What makes it different than all other types of journalism? And I found it's funny, my first research essay was over what is investigative journalism, and I found out that it's this huge controversy over what counts as investigative. So one definition that I liked was a type of journalism that tries to discover information of public interest that someone is trying to hide. So that's what kind of sets it apart from other kinds of journalism, is that a lot of journalism is just like covering a sporting event or covering an election, something like that, but investigative journalism is actually uncovering facts, not just writing about something that's already happened. So I thought that was really interesting, and that's more what I'm interested in, so I was excited to find that out. And I also found out, I already had kind of known this, but I looked more into it, that the field of journalism is definitely shrinking. And a lot of that is because over the past decade or so, we've transitioned way more into like computerized information and stuff on the TV. And so I found that newspapers and magazines and other types of information did not make the transition well. They thought that they'd been around for so long that people would always want to sit on a Sunday morning and read the newspaper. So they didn't make the transition to TV and all that very well, and because of that, they're really hurting now, and a lot of newspapers are going out of business as a result. So I found also, though, that the main problem at hand is that news is online now, but how do they monetize that? Like, how do they put a dollar bill or a dollar sign on that information? Because people just want to type in a search and then be able to pull it up. And if you are monetizing it, someone else won't be, so they don't have to choose yours. So they're trying to figure that out right now and make that switch. And then I just thought this was really neat. This was one of my other pieces of research, was how investigative journalism became what it is today. It had been around for a while, you know, like just people uncovering facts, but it really exploded on the radar during the Watergate scandal with Nixon and his people. They were getting away with it, Nixon and everything that happened with Watergate, and it was going to go uncovered, but there were two journalists for the Washington Post who decided that they wanted to dig a little deeper, and the Washington Post couldn't even support them in their endeavors because they were going against the president, and it was a big deal. But as a result, they never let up, and they ended up having to do their research away from the Washington Post, nothing tied to the name. But as a result, they uncovered the conspiracy, and Nixon had to resign. So that kind of brought to light the power of investigative journalism and what it can truly uncover, the great scale it has. So moving into interviews, I interviewed with several different types of journalism just to see first like what I was interested in. So my very first interview was with a freelance journalist named Leslie Thompson, and it was really interesting interviewing her because what she was doing, I wouldn't even really consider journalism necessarily, because she and her husband just worked together, and he made videos and she would do the talking over, and it would be for like ads for people. But she said, yeah, journalism is anything you want it to be. You can really do anything with it because it's basically just the ability to write, and if you can find someone willing to employ you, it's easy to find jobs. So she explained, though, that the main thing from when back when she was a journalist, like an actual journalist for a newspaper, the main thing that's important is to be able to look confident and poised no matter what. Because a lot of times if you're interviewing someone, they're going to be rude or harsh or not want to give you information, and it's your job to look like you're in control no matter if you feel like you're about to cry. And she said that the field is not shrinking if you know how to adjust, which is what she and her husband have done. I also interviewed 2 college professors, and it was interesting getting to hear how they're teaching it, because something that they're focusing on a lot with their students currently is how to be able to branch out and not only be available to a newspaper, because at some point newspapers may completely cease to exist. So I found that very interesting. And then I had several interviews with the Dallas Morning News with Todd Roberson, William Pry, Miles Moffitt, and Sue Ambrose. And Todd Roberson was awesome because he is an editorial writer now, but he used to be a global investigative journalist, which is what I'm really interested in. And he's been to Saudi Arabia and Iraq and all these different places in dangerous situations, and he's won a Pulitzer Prize, which is like the biggest thing you can win in journalism. And so it was awesome getting to talk to him and hear about all of his incredible experiences. And the others were really, really awesome too. Something that I found out that was interesting was that when you're doing investigative journalism, you have to be aware of the fact that interviewing someone and putting their name in the paper could come back to haunt them. And you have to be able to live with that, or help them be able to escape the situation, or not put a name. So I thought that that was interesting, thinking about how all I want to do is make a difference for good, but you have to consider the fact that your words could hurt someone. So that was interesting. You also have to be curious and open-minded. That's one thing that Mr. Pry really talked to me about, was if you're not curious and you want to do investigative journalism, it's not going to happen, because you're not going to find any stories because you're not looking at the world with that lens. So I also learned that you can't necessarily jump right into investigative reporting. It sometimes takes being a sports journalist or a column, editorial, that kind of thing, for several years before you can do investigative. I also interviewed at Channel 8 News in Dallas, and that was really exciting, and that's where my mentors actually are. But it was really cool getting to learn about how it's different working for a newspaper versus a TV station. The TV stations, their stories are often shorter and more compact because they have to get it like over with in like 30 seconds or a minute at the most, and get all the information for people to be able to remember it. They explained that their job is more difficult because every piece of information that they have has to be caught on camera. Otherwise, people won't believe it. Because if they're reading it in a newspaper and they see the words, they'll be like, oh, okay, I guess this is the truth. But if they're watching the TV and all you say is the information and you don't show it, they're not going to believe it. They're going to be like, prove it. So they have to actually find the proof and film it. And one thing they said when I was talking to Byron Harris, who is one of my mentors now, he was saying, it was this cool metaphor how it's not just like being a doctor where like someone comes in and you diagnose them and then give them a cure. It's like someone comes in, first you have to figure out out of the whole crowd of people who is the person that's sick, and then you have to figure out what's wrong with them, and then you have to figure out what is the cure, or are there multiple cures, and then you have to figure out how to actually treat that and bring it out. It's like a multi-step purpose where it's not like a story is laid out for you. You have to go in and find it yourself, find out if it's actually real, find out if there's actual evidence, and then put it into words. I also interviewed at Fox 4, and that was really cool, with Becky Oliver, who's a very well-known reporter. And it was really neat hearing about her perspective, because it was very similar to the work done at Channel 8, but her stories often are on a larger scale, and she has received like death threats and threats against her family and things like that. So she said, you just have to be prepared for that going into this. It's not a field that you want to be in if you are wishy-washy and you don't really care about what you're doing. She also explained that the field used to be dominated by men, but it's becoming more and more easy for women to become involved, and they're even looking for women. So if you're a woman, you could have an advantage if you're interested in the field. So I've decided to mentor with Mr. Trahan and Mr. Harris from Channel 8. And I don't have a picture with Mr. Trahan yet, but this is me and Mr. Harris talking during the interview. And I was so excited to get to know him, because I've heard from several people that he is arguably the best investigative reporter in the United States, just based on the stories he's covered and the things that he's done and how long he's been in the field, over 40 years. And I was talking to my grandparents about him the other day, and they're like, oh yeah, Byron Harris, he comes on all the time. So I just thought that that was so cool that I'm going to be mentoring with someone who's actually well-known and has done incredible things. And some of the things that he's covered that I just thought were awesome, where he covered stuff on the Russian Mafia, tensions in the Congo, and Area 51. He was also arrested at Area 51 for the unwillingness to give up his camera when they were trying to get him to like stop filming and stop showing stuff that was going on. He was then arrested. So I thought that was really neat. He's also won 6 DuPont Columbia batons, which is like the TV reporting version of a Pulitzer Prize. So that was really cool. And actually last night I was watching some of his videos, and there was this one shaky video of him interviewing this guy who was getting so angry. And I wanted to put it on here, but it wasn't exactly school appropriate. But because the guy was so mad, he was like cussing him out and yelling at him for getting in his face and stuff. And it was so cool how he just kept his calm, because like in this situation, you can't just, you know, go after the guy, because it will look bad on you, not the guy. So he kept his calm, and the guy kept walking away from him or pushing him, and he just kept going and kept following him until the security came and asked Byron to leave so that a scene wouldn't happen. But then that information was helpful for their story later. So that was really cool how He was so collected, and that's something I'll have to work on because I'm a very competitive person, and if someone gets up in my face, I'm going to want to respond. So I guess I'll have a lot to learn from him in that sense this year. And then my other mentor this year is going to be Mr. Jason Trahan, and he works for Channel 8 as well. He used to work for Dallas Morning News, and that's how I got his information, was when I was at an interview at Dallas Morning News and they gave me his name. But he loves Channel 8, and he likes working there more than the news because he finds it more exciting and everything just moves faster, and he has more freedom to do what he wants because they're basically given the opportunity to decide what story they want to uncover, and then they come up with their own deadline and they find the facts, and they're able to go out on interviews when they want to and then come back into the office, which I thought that was so cool. And he and Byron work hand in hand a lot on their stories and stuff, so it was really fun getting to talk to them. The interview I had with them was a joint interview, and they were just joking and like messing with each other the whole time, and it was so cool getting to see that atmosphere in the workplace. At the end, he was even like, I mean, I get paid to do this. How awesome is that? Which is exactly what I'm looking for in a mentor, someone who loves what they do. So I am so excited for this year to see what will happen. I'm hoping to get lots of experience with Channel 8 and can't wait to see what happens. So thank you.